there's Brian Sebastian, Movie Reviews and More, Worldwide TV Network, WomenOnTV.tv, iTube 247 out of Franklin, Tennessee, and iHeartRadio on all platforms around the world. So I always call anything Drum and Bugle Corps special because I am a drum corps nut. And I'm going to play this to see if anybody recognized this sound first of all. What year do you think this is?
It is
1971. No.
27.
Is that Phantom Regiment or who is it? Sword
It's
X?
1977. Lance, you know this. Crossman, attention.
Crossman Corps.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Mary, introduce yourself. Who'd you march with? What years? Go ahead.
So I'm Mary Gromko Murray, and I marched in 27th Lancers. I played snare in 1978, 1979, and 1980. That makes me sound old. And then I went to the Freelancers and was their drumline section leader in 1981 and 82.
And then before that, you were at Fireettes, which is where
I started in the Fireettes, which is
lady wearing, there's 3 snares, and I'm like, I don't know who she is, but I never forgot her. I just knew you were good, and I never knew who she was, Lance. And my memory of Mary, Lance, is when we used to do New London, the boardwalk. When we used to walk down the board, we'd have the course. That's when I first saw Mary. All right, Lance, tell us who you are, what you do, what years you march with.
Oh, me?
Lance?
Yeah,
Me?
you.
Okay. Sorry, I'm out of order. Wow. That's my mind back a little bit here. 1976, New London Surfers. 1977, Sword Excalibur. Skipped a year in between there. 1979, North Star, Drum Bugle Corps.
And you played for Arito.
Couldn't afford anything else, so yeah, that was it.
Okay, J. Frank Nash. Talk about the years that you marched. You marched longer than all of us. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I started out as a 6-year-old in 1958.
Wow.
I marched in the Wind Center Toppers in Brooklyn, New York from 63 to 66. I then became a member of the St. Joseph Patron Cadets, who eventually moved to another parish. We became the St. Rita Brassmen.
Wow.
All right, so my age out year was 1973, and I spent that year in the New York Skyliners. I was there till 1984. I was then a member of the Harrison Bushwackers from 85 through 93. And then I taught the Caballeros from 94 through 99. And I aged out in Syracuse Brigadiers in 2000.
Wow.
Mary and Lance, could you imagine marching that long and starting off at age 6?
Well, no, I didn't start until age 11, but I'm still playing with the group right now. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's been my life's hobby.
That's amazing.
And then so Scott, also you have a thing which is kind of monitoring, and I kind of call you like a historian in the world of drum and bugle corps. Talk about that real quick.
Talking about Frank.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in all those years, I experienced and saw a lot of things. It's been a labor of love my whole life. It's something I still drum to this day. It's something I'll never give up.
So the good thing, we all came from Connecticut corps. None of you guys, Mary and Frank, I don't know when's the last time you guys even saw each other, but you see each other online. Lance, I haven't seen you since I don't even know what year. It might have been the year that we went to, that DCI was in Massachusetts when Blue Devils won. I think that's.
Remember that? Yeah.
When was DCI in Massachusetts?
It
was at the Massachusetts show.
Oh, just okay. So the show there. Mm-hmm.
Right.
And DCI was in Massachusetts, I think, in 2006, maybe.
It's a while ago.
I'm trying to think because there was one year I was up there. We had a senior show the next day. That would have been actually 2005.
It was the 2004, I think, because that's when the 27th Lancers came back with their reunion corps, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it might have been there both years.
Mary, were you
Yeah.
gonna do that at all? Were you gonna go back for the alumni, or no? You had no interest.
Well, I didn't know it happened. You know, this was in the days before internet, and I didn't even know it happened. And here's
Wow.
an interesting thing. There were females that wanted to play snare that year, and the guys were adamant that if Mary wasn't there, no females are going to play snare.
Oh, wow.
All
Okay,
right.
I feel honored, but I didn't even know what happened. Otherwise, I would have been there. I had no idea. I lived on the West Coast. I lived in Portland, Oregon, and I didn't know what was going on until it was over.
Think about this. Go back to when you were in the Fireettes, because again, what was the courage that took you to drive from Connecticut to make that drive to Massachusetts? Because I think Lance, you kind of did the same thing once you ended up in Massachusetts. I didn't want to do that, you know why? Because I didn't want to end up in Massachusetts. I didn't want. No, Frank, you can understand. There was segregation going on there in certain parts of Boston, and I didn't want to get caught up in that. That's why. And I wanted to go to. I didn't want to end up in the winters in Madison, so I was going to California. That's why I was going there. That's why I didn't go.
Well, I didn't have courage. I just had friends that were going up there every Sunday. And that was the winter. You guys, I don't know if you remember the winter of 1978, the blizzard that we had that year.
Oh, yeah.
So that was then. And so we were like, waist deep in snow. We were still trying to drive my friend's Volkswagen, Rhonda Watson, her Volkswagen up to Massachusetts. It took us like 5 hours to get there. We'd get there when rehearsal was halfway over and still, get home. We were very dedicated, but it wasn't me with courage. It was just me with friends who wanted to go.
Wow.
Yeah. For me, growing up in Brooklyn, everything was, public transportation. So we were able to get around quite a bit. And my first, drum corps that I marched in actually was in the neighborhood. So I could walk to rehearsal actually, which was pretty cool.
There you go.
That's amazing.
Lance, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Do you remember the Wet Dream in '79?
Yes, I do. I do. The Wet Dream. The Dream was a contest in New Jersey. And we ended up there. And right during the middle of this thing, it just started to really it was pouring.
Yeah.
Everybody that was got off the field, it was like, you're looking at the snare drums and the snare going like this and all the water's going everywhere. And we came off the field and a couple of the guys on bass were yelling. They were saying, "Wet Dream." Dun, 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 dun,
well,
dun, dun,
that was
Wet
the second
Dream.
time that happened. That also happened in '74. It was interesting in '79. '79 was the year that the Bridgemen decided to go on pantsless. They had the coats, but they didn't wear pants that day.
That was the same year too in '79 that they weren't allowed to compete in finals because they thought there was overage people playing in the corps. I think.
No, that was '77.
I think that was '77. Yeah.
That was '77. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm giving
They didn't think there were overage people.
Oh, there were.
So,
Okay.
Yeah, and they were. I mean, I ended up marching with a couple of them in the Skyliners. They were just barely overage, but they were overage.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But it's funny. Back in the early '70s, late '60s, or whatever, there were plenty of people who marched overage, and no one batted an eyelash.
Yeah.
And it's not right, but it happened.
Right.
Well, but I also think it was this.
Well,
I think it was that people loved it so much that you didn't want to leave.
Right.
Timmy Wall, remember him? I remember Timmy Wall driving the bus sometimes, and I'm like, I know he's old enough to drive a bus, but I never knew how old he was. And I always thought Timmy and Tim Wall became the director of 7th Regiment in Connecticut. And then, a couple of years back, he ended up being director of the year. And I was so happy. I want to get him on the show because I want to find out how old he was. Because I never knew.
Yeah.
And so you remember this? And Scott, Frank, you'll recognize this. So surfers, we always had the very first show of the year, which was always Memorial Day weekend. So everybody from, I don't remember the Fireettes being there ever, but I do remember everybody from the Lancers to the Machanchas, Boston Crusaders, the cadets, all those corps. And we were like, it was our first show, and that kicked off Drum Corps season. And I always remember that memory because only one year were we really prepared. And I think it was 1976.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
When I was in the Skyliners, we also ran the first show of the year, which was Memorial Day weekend in DCA. We did that for a few years.
Wow. Yeah. It was interesting because when my first show down there, I didn't know who these corps were. And the first corps that came on the field was Garfield. And I was like, I didn't know who they were. You know, they looked like a good sized corps and everything like that. And then all of a sudden they started to play, and I'm like, holy hockey, man, these guys are really, really good. You know, and then everybody like in the drum line was waiting for them. The big thing was like, where's 2-7? Where's 2-7? And they came down that night too. But who won the show was the Boston Crusaders. They seemed to be the most prepared. Yeah, I think that was, I don't know if that's when you marched. I think it was 70. That was 77. Yeah, I think that was 77.
No, I marched in 78.
78. Okay,
Yeah.
about a year.
We were always known as the corps that came out weak and ended up strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys did that in 79 too. Because when the beginning of the year, North Star was beating you. The end of the year, you guys ended up like 5th, I think, overall that year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you came on strong at the end of the year. It's like, wow. You know.
No, we knew how to do that. We just didn't know how to come out strong. So yeah.
It takes time to kind of get molded into what you really wanted to do. Yeah. We tried to come out early at North Star. That's what we tried to do. It's kind of blow people away early, make us notice us, and then people catch up and kind of go by. But you know,
during the 80s and 90s, the cadets were known for that. I mean, the things they would do within the last 2 weeks of the season were amazing. I remember one year in particular, 95 was, I saw them at the Meadowlands 2 weeks before championships. And, you know, Madison was there that night. And honestly, if Madison had been cleaner, they would have won that show, you know, because that was an extremely crowd-pleasing show that year. Wow. But I remember watching the show, and I was watching the cadets, and they were their normal, you know, pretty good selves. But then 2 weeks later at finals, they were ridiculous. You know, they seem to have a knack for that big push at the end.
So we were tired by the time we got to the end. It's the problem we had. I guess I don't know. But
so Lance, talk about what made you go to North Star and what was your route like, because you were going to school up there, because it's not easy to skip that year and then join a corps the next year, because I skipped the year and I never went back. And I that's the only thing, 1979 was my worst summer because I didn't march and I still had eligibility. And like I said, I just didn't want to go to Massachusetts. I didn't want to live in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I don't blame you, Brian. It's they don't want to admit it up there, but sometimes it's racial up there. You know, and it's been racial up there since I've been up there. So it's like, it's something that's not mentioned up in Boston, but it's something that occurs. You know, it just is. You know, the weird thing was in 78, you know, when we were going around watching different shows and stuff like that, I got it in my head. I mean, I got a acceptance to Northeastern up in Boston. So I'm figuring like, okay, great. Boston's a great college town, this, that, and the other thing. I did have in the back of my head though, it's like, you know, if I ever maybe showed up to a 27th Lancer meeting, that I might want to check that out. Before that happened though, I was dating a girl in the dorm, and one of her really good friends up in Danvers, Massachusetts, was one of the lead sopranos in North Star. And we just got to talking one night, because they used to have practices in BU in their field house, which was pretty close by where I was. I could just jump off the team and go check it out. So I showed up there one night, and the guy I had met before, he was, you know, the front line, they were going through drills and stuff like that. And the head of the corps, I guess the guy, Dan, pulled me aside. He said, I heard you play a pretty darn good baritone bugle. I said, well, I haven't really played a lot in a year. So I honestly don't know how good I am or what I could ever contribute. And he had me sit down for a week with their, they have specialties. They have like a baritone bugle instructor who just taught the baritone bugles. So he had me sit in on the thing and see if we could do something here. And I was a little bit rusty, but he said, we would like to have you. And I was flabbergasted. I didn't know if I could even make, like they said with Mary, make the cut, and it just kind of went on from there. And I was really just amazed at how really hard they worked. They do drills in like once or twice a week at BU. We would have our section stuff that we do. We'd have, and then we get together with the whole corps for most of the day on Sunday, like we used to do with surfers, and try to work out kinks and add this, add that, do this, that, and the other thing. Try to incorporate some music that might have been not thought of earlier, and to see if you can get it in there. Try to work on, especially, I got to tell you, we weren't the best marching corps in the world. We kind of would almost trip over each other every once in a while. But it's like, I think we were better playing than we were marching. And it's like, that's what 27th could do both. That was just amazing to me. But I just loved, what I loved about North Star is we were pretty exciting. We'd come out there on the field, kind of like what Madison used to do, just try to blow you right off the seats, and we had, Noonan was our soprano guy. I still say he might have been the best one. Maybe there's someone better that in the Muchachos or something like that. But he hit notes that, only dogs could hear, and
yeah, there were a few guys out, Jim Brady from the Bridgman being one.
Yep.
Of course, Jeff Kivett from the Muchachos.
Yes.
And there were some others whose names I don't know right off the top of my head. I just happen to know those two personally.
Didn't Jerry pass away recently?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. It was good to see a lot of people in the drum corps world who didn't even know who he was, but just to recognize that guy was good. When he'd come down that 50 with one arm and wailing that high C, I think it was, I was like, wow, this is, even as a drummer, I'm like, wow, that guy is good. And it just would get you off your seat. And Frank, I think you remember this, and Lance, we marched with, remember CJ Clarence Johnson? He ended up going to Madison and being their soloist. I think the Connecticut corps is where we all had individual talent. But to that bigger corps, you realize, wow, they really were good. We just didn't know it until you went on.
Well, it's funny, when I marched in Sky, we always marched 22 sopranos, and they used the 11 leads, and they were all killers, all of them.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's what we had. And we had about, our soprano line was pretty good. I think we had about 10 or 11 too. They could just scream.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, let them go. Way too much fun.
And
Mary, talk about this. This sticks in my mind. Being on tour, not having a lot of money, and Lance can remember this. We made the record stops, 38 McDonald's stops in one summer. Where Lance, I remember this. Remember we pulled into McDonald's and Phantom Regiment pulled in right behind us, and the people at the McDonald's counter, if you could see their face, they were like, there's over 200 people going into McDonald's and they didn't know what to do. So Mary, we got off our buses and we ran into McDonald's. Phantom got back on the buses and took off.
Well, I have a story about that because when I was in 27th Lancers and we went to McDonald's, we were on our own. Like we had to buy our own food.
Right.
I had no food. I was an import. So I had no food, no money. And so I couldn't buy anything. And so the first year that I went to Freelancers, now Freelancers had an entire bus that was turned into a kitchen. Whoa. And they fed us. And the first time we stopped at McDonald's, I just sat on the bus because that's what I did. In 27th, I couldn't go into McDonald's. And so one of the guys was like, "Aren't you coming in?" I go, "Well, I don't have any money." And they said, "They give you money." I said, "Who gives you money?" The chuck wagon people, they give you money for McDonald's. I was like, "What? Oh my God.
Dude,
Oh my God.
dude.
I got off the bus. I was like, they give you $5. I was like, okay, I'm going to buy the least amount possible and save the rest. But every time we stopped, they gave us money. It was like, oh man, food. It was great.
You know, it's
Hey,
funny
Frank.
you mentioned about.
Okay.
I was just saying, it's funny you mentioned about McDonald's. Back in 1981 with the Skyliners, we were at a show upstate New York, and it was, we stopped at McDonald's, and what happened was we went in there, and they were a little bit overwhelmed at first because a lot of people coming in at one time. So we were, after we finished eating, people were just sitting around because we were waiting for the bus driver to get back or whatever. So one of the waitresses asked one of the guys in the Corps, and the Skyliners were known for being practical jokers and all that kind of stuff. So she said, interesting. What's going on with you guys? So we'll be here for a show and stuff like that. She was talking to a guy named Jimmy Ravert. And so she goes, so what are you guys up to next? He goes, well, actually, we're not leaving until Ronald McDonald comes.
That's classic.
Oh my God.
Of course, the police showed up in about 10 minutes after that, but
That's
Hey,
classic.
But it
so
was
Frank,
funny.
where was the worst place on tour that you toured with the Brassmen, first of all, and then Skyliners?
well, I tell you, Sky, Senior Corps, we didn't really tour or whatever. But actually, the Brassmen were one of the first corps from the East to actually kind of do a tour. We went out to Wisconsin, Kenosha, Wisconsin in '69. And actually, it was a great trip. We didn't really have any issues. And it wasn't like what touring had become afterwards. We got out there, we did a couple of shows, we came back, did the CYO, World Open, that whole loop. But it wasn't as much as what the tours became later on in the 70s and stuff like that. So, we ran into a situation on the way out there, but it was nothing big, kind of rolled off our back. But it was the first time I ever heard a Catholic priest almost curse.
Whoa.
Really.
Yeah, we stopped at a place to eat, and the Corps was, interracial, and they didn't want to let the Corps in. And his name was Father Schiraldi, and he gave that guy a piece of his mind, and he never really raised his voice, but he came close to cursing at him.
Ooh.
Wow.
But
Mary.
But it was what it was.
Mary, worst place for you as a Lancer touring?
What was that? Say again.
Worst place for you as a Lancer touring or freelancer?
I don't know. It's hard to decide. There are a lot of
Hey, was that bad?
I don't know. A lot of really bad places, but
Wow.
mostly like the worst places were when we did really badly. And George Bonfiglio would tell us that we did a double flusher. Do you know what that means?
Wow.
That was a double
Wow.
flusher. And then one time we had a triple flusher. It was really bad. We were in the middle of the season and we got a 55 somewhere. It was 79. And, obviously we ended up in 5th place in 79. So we ended up well, but we had some bad times.
Oh boy.
Mhm.
Lance, worst place traveling, you'll remember this, for surfers was 1977, Oklahoma City.
Oh, that was rough. It's Fireettes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was the-
we marched in the field and it was a boatload of fire ants and we didn't know what these things were. And then all of a sudden people started to scream because these things stung you.
Oh
It was
yeah.
about 105
Oh.
degrees out there and it was brutal.
Oh my
Well, that was just the start. And then I'm like,
Yeah.
fire ants are really bad. And we're going to the pool. And I was like thinking, nah, there's nobody around. I'm thinking this, when you're rehearsing, and everybody can relate to this, when no one comes out to see you rehearse and you're in the middle of a neighborhood, something's wrong. So I'm thinking,
Yeah.
this can't be good. So, Lance, did you go to the pool?
I I don't remember, to tell you the truth. I think I did.
Because here's what happened.
think
I didn't go. There was only like 15 of us that stayed in the rehearsal. They went to the pool. There was Indians and whites there. They jumped in the pool, our members. They all jumped out. So, Frank, you can imagine what was going to happen.
Okay.
And then everybody gets on the bus, comes back. And I was like, well, you guys came, that's pretty quick. No, we got people following us now with their pickup trucks. And we know they got shotguns and they got poles and rocks in there to where we are rehearsing. So we had to have the police come around because they're like circling us as we're rehearsing. And again, we're all interracial corps. So not only the firing, it's 105 degrees. Now we've got people that don't like us because we don't belong there. I have not been to Oklahoma ever since that, and I never forgot that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, when we were in Birmingham, I don't know, maybe a third of our corps when I was in 27th Lancers was Black. And we're in Birmingham, Alabama, but we were staying in like Homestead or someplace like that, really out there. And some dude was standing there on his, he had a bike and he had these big old glasses, and we're coming off the field. We're going to go in and eat. And he says something to me, and I don't know what he said to me. And he said, I said, what? He goes, why are you here with all of these N-words? I'm like, oh, dude, you just asked the wrong person that. Out of my face.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So Alabama was really bad.
So you're there and
you said that was back in 79?
Yeah. Lance, you're
What's up?
Star.
No, I said, was that in 79? I'm sorry.
Oh, Lance, being in North Star 1979 in Alabama finals, what was that like for you?
A dream come true. An absolute dream come true. I had tears in my eyes when I was when I got on the field, and I think we ended up in, ninth place in the prelims, and I was probably more nervous going to the qualifiers than I was going to finals, because no one's sure who's going to make the final 12. So you had to be spot on, and it's like a brand new stadium. You're not used to it. It kind of echoed a little bit down there too, but after we finally got everybody scoring, we ended up in ninth. Everybody was giving everybody a hug, and it was great. And then it was just icing on the cake, though, by just walking out on that field with about 40,000 fans facing you. And it's like, holy, the S word. I don't know if you would just say that on here. But I think everybody was still nervous. Most of the corps had already marched in a finals before, but some of us had not. So we're not kind of used to this kind of thing. So literally there's there's one guy, he's kind of like me. He, Danny, he was from New Hampshire. He came down and joined the corps too, the same year I did. And both of us were baritone bugle players. And we both looked at each other right before, the gun goes off. And him and me both had tears in our eyes. Because it's like, finally, you got there. All that friggin' work, all the heartache and pain and split lips. Oh my God, I used to split my lip all the friggin' time. It used to drive me nuts. And just all that hard work finally paid off. And I was like, it was something I'll never forget. It's just something that's ingrained in me now. It's that I still get tears when I was thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Lance, I think you just hit that nail on the head, because, I think that there is nothing like marching in finals. And that is a milestone. If you've not marched in finals, it's okay. But when you have marched in finals, it is astounding. The experience is amazing. There's just nothing like it.
Yeah, it's just finally,
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys are familiar with this name, but Walter Winkleman. He was the drum major of the Skyliners. Very well known. he used to always, he would talk to the Corps before shows, but there was this one speech that he always gave. And he talked about how Drum Corps gave the average person a chance at stardom.
Yeah.
Every Saturday night, no matter what you did during the week, on Saturday night, you were somebody.
Yeah.
You know, and it was really, and it hit home every time he talked about that because it's so true.
It's very true.
Yeah.
Can I tell a story about that?
Go ahead. You got 60 seconds. Go ahead.
So, I just marched. I played snare. I was a girl. I didn't know that was a big deal. And I just did it. And so in 1982, my dad went to Montreal to go to the finals. And he brought a friend of his with him who just liked music. He didn't know about drum corps, but he liked music. And so he and his friend are in a fast food restaurant or whatever, having lunch, and they hear someone talking about, the competition. And so, they start talking, and the women said to my dad, do you have a child, marching? And my dad said, yeah, my daughter plays in the Freelancers. And they, of course, assumed that I was a flag. And then he said, no. And then, of course, they assumed that I played horn. And he said, no, she plays snare drum for them. And they said to him, your daughter is Mary Gromko?
Oh, wow.
I didn't know who these people were.
Wow.
I was kind of a rock star. I didn't know that. But yeah, my dad was like, yeah, my daughter's Mary Gromko.
All right. So here's the thing. I've got like 50 seconds. Do you guys have time to do a part 2?
Oh God, yeah, this is fun.
I don't today. I'm sorry because, okay, when you turn it off, I'll tell you why.
All right, I'm going to end with this. All right, so this is Brian.
Okay.
I want to thank everybody, Mary, Lance, Frank, and then you know what? I'm going to come back with these 2 guys and do a part 2 because we got more to talk about. Mary, I'm going to have you on. I'm going to make her one of my female co-hosts because it's all about women on Movie Reviews and More. So I always
All right.
smile.
Yeah.
Give them one of yours because the world needs it. We will see you next week.